Hi, you're listening to the Most.mo podcast. In this episode, concept artist and animation director Vincent Proce. David heads to his hometown of Chicago, Illinois for an in-person interview with award-winning animation director and concept artist Vincent Proce. David and Vince have known each other for over 20 years through the Chicago animation scene. The two met up in Vince's home studio to chat about all things storytelling, including Vince's creative process and the status of creating concept art in the era of AI. Vince, a Most.mo juror for the past 3 years, is best known for his illustrations in the game Magic the Gathering, as concept artist for the Oscar-winning film The Shape of Water, and more recent work on It Too, Smile, The Boys, and Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities.
We are with Vince Proce and we are in his home. Thanks for letting us invade your space, your creative workshop and everything. I think one of the reasons I wanted to get this on video was just because I love your house. It's even the outside. While we were pulling up, Edwin's like, so is this house like all Halloween-y or is it just like a regular house? And I was like, I think it's both of those things, but year round.
Right.
You have that house that kind of almost looks like art that you would do.
Yeah. It's a very spooky house. We got, lucky enough to get ivy growing on it when we moved in. And, and that kind of makes everything so much more natural, You feel a little bit more cozy and more nostalgic when you're around more green.
Right.
And less manicure.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my opinion, I like it wild.
No,
I like it wild.
It's nice to see, it looks like, taken from an episode of, what do they do those things on the History Channel? What if everyone died off and nature took over? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I mean, we were more going for the fairy tale thing, but if you want to go post-apocalyptic, I guess we could do that too.
Hey, I mean, it looks like a house. It doesn't look like it's like burned out, but it's like that nature.
House,
there's nothing going to stop nature from like becoming a whole eventually like a Hobbit's type of lair.
Part of the roof is definitely going to be tree,
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like but there's like a total vibe in this space, the art, the feel, everything like that. But so anyone who doesn't know, Vince is a visual artist. Like he's a concept. What's the best way to describe you? Concept artist, visual developer, all of the above.
Yeah.
You're a painter, I'm just illustrator.
I'm a dude that will do any kind of art that that's required.
Yeah.
For whatever gig, but I mean, I like to do a lot of like ink work and animation type stuff, but my main gig is doing like concept art for film and TV mostly.
And so most recently you want to shoot off some of your credentials. I want to kind of give it a foundation of where you are now, but then I want to kind of talk about how you started and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah.
Kind of do a little loop around. E-storytelling, as it were.
Well, I just had a movie come out that I did some monster concepts for, transformations and stuff like that for the movie Smile, which is doing pretty well.
I love the trailers. They're very funny, and like it reminds me of that camp scary that I've been familiar with in the 90s and stuff like that, where it was almost kind of like Scream, but a little bit harkens back to Freddy Krueger. I don't know. It seems humor. I mean,
it's very demonic.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And it's pretty scary. I don't like seeing horror I don't like seeing horror movies in general because they scare the shit out of me, but seeing them in theaters scare me even more because fucking so big and in my face.
Right.
I get really scared.
How the hell is that a thing? Like, the most of your stuff is scary as hell. Does it scare you to create it? Like, I know you do a lot of future design and industrial kind of, post-apocalyptic, or not even post-apocalyptic, but just like
robot shit.
Yeah, but like as an example like this, or just you have so many graphic type of
Horror.
horror type
Yeah,
of
and I'm
art.
kind of known for that too. And I've done a lot of monsters for film. I did like the It Chapter 2,
Yeah.
Pennywise, and all that stuff. And it's not the like when I'm doing it, I do sometimes I am affected by it sometimes, but I always kind of like change what I'm doing so I don't get like bland, you know? So I'll be working on like horror, and then I'll take a break and I'll work on some sci-fi, or I'll work on just, sketching some face or something like that,
Hmm.
just to break the the horror cycle, because it does come after you. When I was doing all the insane pictures, the insane asylum
Yeah.
pictures,
Right.
I had to do a lot of research to, old insane asylums of people and stuff like that. And man, the torture that these people went through in insane asylums in the early part of the 20th century was awful. And I got a lot of pictures, and it's like painting this torture and everything. And I did some reference of myself too, where I put myself in some of these, crazy positions and stuff like that. And
So
it affects you. It affects your
so you
head a
do a
little
lot
bit.
of research for. I mean, I
Hmm.
remember seeing. I mean, again, kind of going back to sci-fi, how you reference everyday objects and seeing how there's a form and function of that object within the reality it exists. And then
Yeah.
you kind of like will create, as you're dressing your stage, you'll like kind of plug things in, but like something like that where it's human and you're kind of depicting torture or restraining or whatever you want to call it back in those days,
Yeah.
however they justified things in asylums.
Well, I do research for everything. If I want to, like the painting behind you, if I want to paint a sci-fi painting, I'll look up, um, a lot of space stuff, but then I'll also look up artists that I like John Berkeley or John Harris, uh, that did those kind of paintings in the 70s, or when when I was doing these paintings, uh, the production designer gave me a bunch of reference art that was old paintings, like Goya paintings and stuff like that, that they wanted me to capture the feel of, with color and light, and the chiaroscuro
Hmm.
kind of lighting and everything on stuff. And I reference paintings for all that stuff. I'm actually looking at a printed out picture of a painting and trying to capture that color while I'm painting over here on the canvas.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you kind of put yourself in the role of those subjects.
Yeah, you kind of feel like you're in there with them.
Uh-huh.
Like even this.
Hmm.
I repainted this character here several times because they wanted the pose different. So you wipe it out with turpentine, and then you just paint over it again and again and again. And
And this is oil. You say you do
this is
most of your
oil.
stuff in oil.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I mean, I work digitally as a profession
Mhm.
most of the time. I mean, that's kind of been my bread and butter for 20 years.
So let's cycle back then and just kind of talk your kind of foundations in art. Like your dad was an artist or is an artist.
Yeah, yeah. My dad's an artist. He does a lot of really macabre work also. He's always been macabre. I mean, from when we were kids, he was always scaring us and monsters. We lived in a haunted house when we were kids.
Yeah. It's like when,
I got a picture of it over there. Maybe we could
yeah, get,
take a look at it.
okay.
But growing up in a haunted house, having a dad that was really into that stuff, Frankenstein and all that kind of stuff, and we're always building the models and stuff. So we're really into that. And then they owned a costume shop for many years.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Many years. I don't know, it had to be like 30 or 40 years they had that costume shop.
Like a Halloween type of costume shop, like a
Yep.
year-round type of
But they
place?
did it year round. So they would do
Like fantasy now
they would do
exists.
plays.
Oh, wow.
They would do a lot of like high school plays and stuff like that, and they would do a lot of events, parades,
Cool.
Renaissance fair, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They had a full suit of armor in there. They had all kinds of cool stuff.
Where is this now?
That was on the Oak Park Mall.
So this is like kind of west south, not quite. I got Oak Park Mall is
It was like Harlem and Lake Street.
yeah. So this is in Chicago.
It was in Oak Park.
Yeah, Oak
It was in
Park in
Oak Park,
Chicago.
but yeah. It's close to Chicago.
I'm picturing the Oak Park Mall, that big old orange and brown
Yeah.
type of round symbol.
Yeah,
I think.
that's where it was. It was there.
Mhm.
You know, big place too. It was kind of haunted. Also, there was always shit going on in that place. But the past is like a memory. It's like a dream. You don't even know if it's real or not
Yeah.
because you can't relive it. So you can't ever. You know, the only way that you can get any sort of solid evidence is through a photo or video or something. And even that, everybody nowadays,
Yeah. Anything can be
everything is fake
manipulated. Yeah, deep
nowadays.
fakes now.
You
Yeah.
know, it's like you
Yeah.
can't. Yeah.
Well, it's I mean, the funny thing is, it's like when you're presented with this stuff, you're like, am I going out of my mind, or did this really happen? And it's just like you take one of two paths, you know?
I mean, whenever you wake up from a dream and it feels like it's the realest thing that ever fucking happened to you. And it's
Right.
like it was so real that you're shaken to your core as to what
Right.
happened in the dream, whatever it was, whether it be sexual or alien or
Sure.
fucking flying or whatever,
Right.
that's going to be. It's like, and you wake up and it's like, oh my God, it's like I could actually feel
Yeah.
the terror,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So you're around art, you're growing up, and when did you start pursuing art? I mean, has it always been?
Well, I never thought that I'd do anything else. So I really, honestly, I was never really smart enough to do anything else. I think that I gotta, I remember I was in drug rehab when I was in my teen years,
Okay.
and I took an IQ test in there. Okay, and it was like 135 or something like that. I was like, walking around like I was all fucking badass and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking this whole time that I'm like this fucking genius or something like that.
Right.
And then I was over at my mom's house, and she had dug through a bunch of shit, and she had found a bunch of old schoolwork of mine and everything. And she's just like, and she's like, when handing me the paperwork, I'm going through the paperwork, and there was an IQ test in there from when I was like a sixth grade or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I scored like an 81.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
A fucking ape scores 80.
Yeah.
It was like, I was so shattered.
Yeah.
It was like,
It humbled you.
It's like I thought I was a fucking genius over here. And my mom was just like, no, honey.
So wait a minute, was the 135 a real thing, or was that a dream that you believed?
This is what I'm saying. I mean, anything's possible. I mean, it could
Right.
all be a fucking dream. Who knows, man?
Yeah.
I was in drug rehab, for Christ's sake. I know I wasn't of my right mind.
You were riding the ship that went like it's like
Yeah,
I
it's
got
like-
one. I 135. It's 135.
Yeah, sure. I'm
Yeah.
fucking a genius,
Uh-huh.
man. It's like I'm afraid to take another IQ test now. It's like,
Oh,
my
please.
God, I'd find out I'm a fucking complete moron. It's like I'm an idiot savant.
Hey, there's worse ways to live life though. Wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
So you were feeling pretty good about your intelligence, but you felt like you just wanted to pursue art.
Well, it wasn't even about
It's like
intelligence. or-
ego.
Art was for me a way to get closer to my dad. It was a way to make friends. I had a lot of friends in school because I would draw pictures of them in study class and stuff like that. And I was never a good student. I was a terrible student. I ditched class all the time. I left home when I was 15, and just lived out on the street. And I hardly ever
around.
went to school, and so I didn't think that I was ever going to be anything at that point when I was a teenager and growing up till I was like maybe 20, 21. I didn't think I would be around until I was 30. I just figured it was, I was going to live on the street and I was going to be like Bukowski,
Uh-huh.
but without the writing, drawing,
Uh-huh. So
and then,
so you're kind of going with that momentum of just living fast or living just like by your
living
wits.
fast, living just by your wits, but fast, like going on long trips across the country and hitchhiking and just, doing whatever,
Yeah.
not really worrying about how I'm going to make money,
Yeah.
and I got lucky enough. I had a lot of really good mentors growing up, a lot of men that were, maybe not necessarily educated or artists, but with a good moral grounding.
Mhm.
I've been around a lot of guys like that helped me become a man, and I think it's really important, you know, to actually cross that threshold and feel like, you know, you're not a kid anymore, that you could take care of responsibility and you could hold down a job and you could have a kid and raise a kid and have a family and a wife and a house and a car. I mean, that you all have to accept that you're a grown up now, you know? So
Right.
it took me a while to do that,
Uh-huh.
you know, and it wasn't until that happened where I actually was able to make a career out of my art. I'm a very late bloomer. I didn't start really making any money doing art until I was in my 30s.
So is this when you were at Homewood working at Star
Hmm.
Tunes?
Yep, that was my first real you know, regular job, like a grown-up job,
So
doing that,
before that, you were just kind of doing art.
doing whatever. I was trying to do comics for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I was I did whatever I could, you know, whatever I could do.
Because like,
Mostly it was doing like comics and stuff like that, and I wanted to make a career out of that, you
so,
know.
so how'd you land? So Homewood in Star Tunes animation company, and Homewood was had Warner Brothers IPs like Animaniacs,
Hmm.
Tiny Toon,
And Hysteria was the main
Hysteria
thing
was
that
the
we worked on.
okay. So
Um,
how do you go from trying to do graphic art to getting into an animation studio?
so this is like anything with anything, that it's all, you have to meet somebody, you have to know somebody that knows somebody, and you just, right place at the right time. My whole career is right place at the right time. I really think that the hustle definitely helps, and having a lot of skill definitely helps, but you know, if you just know somebody that knows somebody at this place and they're like, oh, they're hiring people with no animation experience,
Hmm.
why don't you go down and try it out? They're hiring them because they had lost a bunch of people to LA. You know, they had this whole exodus from the studio, so they needed a bunch of new people to come in and do in betweening and learn animation and learn directing, and they had a few core people there, and I was uh, part of a crew of like maybe 5 or 6 guys that all got hired at the same time.
Hmm.
And then Mike Owens and Wendy came on with Greg later.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a really great crew over there at Star Tunes, man. It was really a nice, it was a great learning experience. It's like, if I didn't do that again, I wouldn't have been able to do everything I've done since then, because that taught me how to work.
Kind of structured you.
Yeah, it taught me how to work fast,
Deadlines.
deadlines. The more you work, the more money you make. It wasn't an hourly thing; it was a footage thing.
That's how they used to do it, but it's like fruit by the foot.
Yep, and it would be great because you would get those some scenes where you'd have a held cell for fucking 3 seconds, you know, and it'd
Oh
be like,
yeah.
ah, money in the bank, dude. That's
Uh-huh.
that's $60 right there, baby. You know,
Right.
um,
That's when everything was on film, and they did like that's how they measured out
yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Like when I first went to India from Star Tunes, they were still working with cells and painting and cell painting and
I mean, I
everything.
think they still are in some cases. I mean, I feel like,
I
I mean,
don't think they do that much anymore.
like with Danger and Eggs, not to jump forward, but so we know, Mike Owens
Hmm.
from
From
Star
Star
Tunes,
Tunes, yeah.
and Wendy as well, Wendy Owens, and Greg Schreier, who's also like an animator that we all are friends with
Yeah,
and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
And when you're saying you went to India, you were going to India to be a part of like a mentor program over there,
Right. So Mike Owens did it right before me.
right?
Um, and when they came back, it was funny because you can't you can't describe
India,
what it's like to
yeah.
go to a country that's completely foreign to the way, just even the way people think is different than the way we think. So it's really, you're really out of your element. Like you go to Canada or you go to Mexico or you go to Europe, you kind of feel like you live in that.
It's a Western kind
Yeah,
of
it's all
culture.
Western living, and it's same kind of TV and same kind of,
Hmm.
but you go to India and it's such a different culture, such a different religion, such everything is so different
Hmm.
that you can't you can't express it. You can't tell anybody what it's like. You have to go and experience it. So when Mike and Wendy came back, we were trying to ask them, well, what did we do? What's it like? Well, they're like, they couldn't describe it, because
Yeah.
it's just such a fascinating, intense, you know,
And you
just,
were going there like because you were doing all hand drawn stuff at
yeah.
that
In those
time.
days, we were working on cell animation, so they had started a school there,
Hmm.
and what it was a sister studio to Star Tunes, called Heart Animation there, and they had a school attached to it to teach people how to animate so they could then go downstairs and work in the studio.
Right.
And so I was helping with teaching classes, and I was doing some management down in the studio. I was doing some drawing, I was creating curriculum, and living there and enjoying the Indian culture and lifestyle. And it was great, dude. I mean, it was honestly, everybody should go and stay in India. You got to stay longer than a month though, because at the end of a month, you're just figuring it out. You don't even, you're just figuring out how to move from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And what the
You were there
mysteries
for 3
of the
months,
place was.
as it was?
We were there for a year.
Oh,
Whole
wow.
year, man.
Because Mike was only there for like 3 months, or was it 6 months?
You might have been there 6 months, I think.
Okay, yeah, it was probably 6 months. But yeah, you went for a year.
Yeah, well, we went for 6 months, and then we came home for a couple weeks, and then we went back for another 4 months.
So you went with your wife, Jen,
And my kid.
And how old was
He was
Zach?
4.
So
He
you
was 4.
Wow, that's wild. So I mean, that's the immersive experience.
Oh yeah, and we dived right in, man.
Yeah.
And we're like going across India with all these like trunks and stuff on the back of these bags and shit like that, with the kids sitting on top of the whole thing. We're dragging it, just guessing our way through. We didn't have phones in those days. There were no cell phones or anything, so we had to just figure it all out on the fly.
And how were you guys received there?
Oh, great. Everybody was very nice. Everybody was just.
And this was like Hyderabad,
cool.
right?
Yeah, we flew into Bombay, and then or it was Mumbai, and then we flew from there over to Hyderabad. And yeah, it was cool, man. It was a really, really great experience. We did a lot of traveling, and a lot of crazy shit happened.
So you have a drawing, and I don't know if you still have it around. I'm sure you do, of Jen kind of like soldier fatigues with Zach on her side and everything.
Yeah.
Was that before India, or was that because Zach was probably? I mean, he was 4 by then.
That might have been before India.
Okay,
because it was that was when I was doing comics and stuff when I did that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I put that character in the 2230.
Oh yeah.
She's the leader of all
Simian Samurai.
Yeah. She's the leader of all the smart gorillas in the jungle.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's cool.
They're gonna meet her later.
I mean, it seems like you're really, it's interesting. People ask where you get your influence. It's obviously just your life experience, kind of just
mostly,
but just like heightened, and just kind of bring it to whatever extreme you want. So you spend a year in India. You did animation there. After that's done, what happens next?
Well, the studio. Something happened at the studio where they sent the wrong email to the wrong place, and we lost all our contracts somehow. And the last thing I did at Star Tunes after I got back from India was I did a Justice League, Bruce Timm storyboard. It was beautiful, dude. It was fucking beautiful. It was like 150 pages or some shit like that. It was for a short thing, and this Martian Manhunter. It was super cool, dude.
This is all through Star Tunes still?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like Ruger or somebody was getting us hooked up with it, but then that fell through, and when that fell through, they went bankrupt. And
when is this? This
was like 2000?
Yeah,
like 2000, and yeah. After that, it was because I had lost my house at that point too, so I had to move in with my grandfather with my family.
Oof,
that was brutal, dude.
With your wife and your son, who's 5 now.
Yeah, around that age. Yeah, it's 5 or 6. And we, that was tough because I didn't have work, and I didn't know how to use the computer.
Right.
It was like completely foreign to me. So we got a credit card somehow, and I had bought a Dell computer, and because I went ahead and I spent the $1,500 or $2,500 or whatever it was to get a really nice computer to get Photoshop on it, so I could try to keep up with the world. I mean, everybody was using it, and I had no idea how to even make a portfolio.
Right.
So I mean, I was usually using copy machines and stuff like that, color copiers and stuff to try to make
So
portfolios.
you didn't go to college or anything, art school. It's funny because, there's like a term right now called outsider art, and it's usually, people who are living on the street or they're kind of have
Yeah, I know
yeah.
it very well. My dad wants to be an outsider artist very
Yeah.
badly.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, yeah.
But it's weird because there's also a culture is like, oh, if this person has been diagnosed with a condition, then their work is getting more attention or whatever. But there's like a whole dynamic to outsider art, which is kind of like this pretentious, top down
Right.
perspective of
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
buying this stuff.
That's fine art.
That's just
This is very
it's the commodity
quirky.
of it, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you kind of, if you were going to say on paper, you sound like an outsider artist. You're talking about, you know, you're living on the streets, you're making what can come of whatever you have. You're admittedly not smart, but you're like creative.
Yes.
So I don't. That's not my experience with you. Those are your words. I'm not saying.
Well, no,
Yeah,
that's totally cool, dude.
yeah,
That's how I felt.
yeah.
That was my experience with life, again, it was a matter of trying to grow up.
So like you're hitting on cylinder, saying this has already gotten me to this point. I'm going to keep investing in my art.
Right. Well, I mean, I couldn't do anything else. I mean, like I said before, it's not just. It was also like therapy for me because when when bad stuff happens, I I fall into working,
Right.
and I'll work, and time will go by, and I won't even notice it. It'll just go by, and
Right.
by the time I'm done, it's like, oh, I got this cool drawing now, and it's when you're self conscious about everything, and you you try to do something else that can show, oh, I do have value. This is my value. This is what I could do, and I would try to make it. And my taste always changes, and I think it gets better. So as my taste gets better, my skill gets better because I'm trying to meet my taste because I do all this work and I hate it.
Yeah.
And then I just have to just keep on trudging through until it gets to the point where I actually do like it.
Yeah.
I mean, uh I'm not like one of those guys that could just sit down and just you know draw a perfect outline of a figure or anything like that. I'm very like sketchy. I have to find the lines and find the form and find all these things in there. I can't
Hmm.
just draw it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys out there that have this insane perspective ability and one line drawing
Like
like Kim Jong Gi,
yeah,
that
who
guy
just
that just
passed
passed
away.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that guy is like I mean he's God level kind of
Yeah.
kind of artist guy.
Right.
And there's this other guy, Karl Kopinski, that this fucking guy, he draws with both hands
That's
at the same time.
show off.
Yeah, and that it's like all I want to do whenever I see a reel or something like that online, I just want to write to him, "Fuck you, Carl. You're just a fucking asshole."
Uh-huh.
you know,
That's funny.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I always tell people, you are probably among if not one of three of the best artists I've ever met.
Thank you. That's saying a lot.
Well, it's true. I mean, I feel like everything that you've always produced not only is so well executed and has such a good feeling, but it's so coming from a real place too. And it's not necessarily this reality. Even if you're creating a reality, it makes sense in the reality in which you've created. I
hmm
remember one of the first things that you started animating on your own. You might have been still at Star Tunes, was this creature, and you were trying to test animation of a creature that kind of split itself.
Yeah,
It was like
yeah.
it was a very
The
organic.
Horda Beast.
Yeah,
The Horda Beast. It opens up and a man crawls out from the inside of it.
right.
Yeah.
And I was just like, fuck. That's when I knew I wasn't going to do 2D animation anymore. I was just like, because I started doing 2D animation and I was at Columbia. Oh, I just bumped the mic twice. Sorry. So I was doing 2D animation at Columbia, and it wasn't really like hitting on all cylinders. And I kind of was doing sculpture and everything like that. And I fell into that. I was like, oh, kind of figuring out. But I was like surveying you and other people who were, I knew of you because of Mike and Greg and Wendy. And I was just kind of surveying what you guys are doing. I was like, yeah, that's the level that they're at. And it's like, I'm never going to be at that
Well,
level.
I mean, honestly, I think that anybody can that is proficient at all with holding a pencil and being able to draw can do animation. It's just a matter of practice. And I think that that's why you in between for a year before you start animating,
Kind of
because
get those
you
muscles.
learn how to do it. You get the muscle memory. You draw with your elbow. Um, if it wasn't for animation, I would have never learned weight in a character. I
Hmm.
mean, before that, characters always seemed like they're floating a little bit when I draw them and stuff. But that gave me that that sense of weight and composition and all that stuff. I mean, John McClanahan was a amazing animation teacher,
Right.
and it was all on the job,
Right.
and we're working with dope sheets and all that, and it's like now if I'm just figuring out how to use all that kind of stuff. I just picked up After Effects, and
Hmm.
and it all kind of works the same way. And I was really happy about that they kept the dope sheet sort of thing going.
Right.
And you know, I don't know. I have to
It's
try to
funny
figure it out.
because it's now, with Dragon Frame stop motion animation software, it has that dope sheet, and it's just kind of when Mike would sit in on some of the classes that I was conducting, we had to explain exposure sheets and dope sheets or whatever, and it was just kind of like, well, it's this, but you plan it on the side rather than it just kind of does its thing.
Yeah.
There's like a self-populating dope sheet or whatever, but it's nice to have the, yeah, recognizable tools. So when you're teaching yourself new tools, like whether you're teaching yourself Photoshop, and I remember that, how you like, oh, look at, I
Oh my.
could paint under the painting and erase above, and you were like showing me these little tricks that even I'll do today. I was like, oh, this is what Vince does
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, Photoshop. I mean, like I said, I didn't know how to use a computer when I first got Photoshop, and obviously I had to get a pirated version and everything. I couldn't afford it.
Right.
Um, but it was really difficult for me to learn that program. I mean, I worked at it for a long time, and I remember at one point I broke down in tears because I just couldn't fucking figure it out.
Hmm.
I couldn't remember the buttons. It's all just about remembering buttons and where
Keyboard
things are and
shortcuts and
stuff
all
and
that kind of stuff.
shortcuts
Yeah.
and layers and effects and all that stuff, which now it's like a second nature to me. But then it was awful learning it. And I think kids today are a lot it's a lot easier for them to pick stuff up, it seems. I mean, there's so much more
It's relative.
media out there that helps them learn.
Well, I mean, they're exposed to that kind of interface at such a young age. Like
Yeah.
computers weren't really relevant in this craft as much as they were in the 90s. And that's when I was going to school. I mean, we learned computer stuff, but it's like the interface. If you talk to people older, it's all about like understanding how menu bars work and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
if, and that like now that, user interfaces become more intuitive, but it's still a baseline language that people like kids now, that's just how they've always learned things
Yeah.
interactively.
Yeah.
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 So it took you a while to learn all those things, but you
Oh, it
didn't.
was
But you didn't
awful.
quit
Yeah.
because it's like one of the things
Well, I had to. I had a family at that point, and
yeah,
I knew that there was no way I was going to move forward in my career if I didn't understand the basics of Photoshop and how to use that program.
yeah,
And I so at that point when Star Tunes ended, I was, a flag flipping in the wind. I wasn't tethered to anything, so I was doing anything I could to get work. I actually ended up doing bricklaying
yeah,
for a summer, and it's back-breaking work. It's really hard. You feel like you worked the day, but
right,
man, dude, it's like I was thinking, oh, well, is this what I'm gonna do now? I'm
right,
gonna be a bricklayer now,
right,
and then Calabash came along,
yeah.
and
So Calabash is like a animation studio, does a lot of commercial animation,
yeah, yeah.
cereal commercials, tricks, Lucky Charms, Honey Nut Cheerios. I got to work a little bit on a McGruff thing, which I was excited about. McGruff the
I
crime
did a
dog.
Lucky Charms thing, I think, and I was just doing in betweening there,
Yeah,
and for me at that point, I was directing when I was at StarTunes, so going back to doing in betweening, and you're looking at this guy this animator gives you this thing, and there's like five fingers that there's a sixth finger or something like that, and it's like you gotta change. It's like why are there six fingers on this guy's hand, or he puts the left hand on the right hand, it's shit like that. It's just stupid shit.
yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, why am I fucking in between? And I know it sounds terrible,
No,
but
but it
for
makes
me,
sense though.
I felt really, it was tough. So I mean, I wanted to get out of there any way I could, and I ended up getting a job at a art store downtown on Chicago Avenue,
Yeah,
and and I worked there for Christmas season, I think, and a guy there that I met, really cool dude. He ended up leaving and getting a job at Midway Games. Okay, and I had got him a job at Star Tunes,
right.
and he got me a job at Midway. So I ended up getting a job there. He took my portfolio there. I had struggled for a whole summer with Photoshop to make a portfolio
Wow.
to bring over there, and I finally got it done. And I must have made 10 of them. And they would go there and they disappear. They go there and they disappear. They go there, they disappear, until finally a guy called me up and said, "Hey, your portfolio ended up on my desk. Would you want to come in and do this an interview for a gig?" I'm like, "Sure." And I thought I was going to get a job doing motion capture or something with the guy that
Was doing
got
something
me the
like
gig.
that.
That's what he was doing. So I figured that's what I was going to do. They said, "No, we want to hire you as a concept artist." I'm like, "Concept artist? Well, what's
Did you-
that?"
yeah.
I didn't even fucking know what it was at that point.
So how old are you right now?
I was in my 30s. I
Okay.
was like 33, I think, 32 or 33.
And how old is Zach at this point? Your son?
Zach was he's 8,
Okay.
7 or 8. But so I got that gig there, and it was so cool because I got to meet a team, and the guy that was running it, he's now the one of the vice presidents of Microsoft or something. This guy Matt Booty, his career shot up right after he hired me, and he ended up leaving the team.
Wow.
To become one of the presidents of the company of Midway or whatever.
Wow.
So we got dispersed among a bunch of other teams, and I worked on a couple of video games. I worked on PsyOps and Stranglehold, and I worked on a Ballers game, a Mortal Kombat game, all while I was working there.
Wow. Yeah, Mortal Kombat was like, I remember seeing some of your artwork that there was a Mortal Kombat book that they put out of the art of the book, I think.
Well, there was a Art of Midway book.
Yeah, and you have a bunch of your work.
See, that was Stefan Martinaire. So Stefan Martinaire, when he got hired at Midway, after I was there for a couple of years, he had gotten hired as kind of like a concept art lead. And I was feeling a little bitter about that, because I've been here all this time fucking sweating, and then you keep bringing this fucking guy in.
Right.
Well, they brought him in for a reason. The guy's a fucking badass. He's a Photoshop master. This motherfucker came up with Craig Mullins in the early 90s, with early versions of Photoshop and stuff like that. And he knew these tricks with Photoshop, with using photos and mashing them together, this photo bashing sort of technique with Photoshop that would speed your paintings up like 1,000,000%. You get really realistic looking backgrounds and stuff like that when you just map these textures onto surfaces that you tint and paint and stuff like that. And he had taught me that, and I remember I was struggling with it, and I ran in his room like, "Stefan, how the fuck do I do this fucking Photoshop shit?" He's just like, Vince, he's a French guy. "Vince, there's no magic bullet. You have to just work at it and just do it over and over again until you get it." And so I finally, I figured it out. But it's like with anything, you can't take somebody else's technique and just adopt it.
Right.
You have to work within the sensibilities that you already have to make anything,
your own,
to merge it into your own methods or your own practices of what you do.
Right. It's well, just like everything else, the first stage of embarking on a new whatever it is there's just this anger and denial, like this is never going to work, and it seems to be like a cyclical thing that I'm hearing with your story, but also it's not an uncommon thing. You get to that point where you feel like, fuck it, I'm going to abandon it. But it's like, what are your choices if you abandon it? There's not much of a choice. So it's like, you could pursue something and know that you'll get better. It's like sometimes when you have natural ability, you think, why doesn't it come easier to me? And we all would love to be able to pick up a paintbrush and just be like, look at that. And everyone's like, oh my goodness,
It's so awesome.
And that's not necessarily how it works.
Yeah.
It's just like,
well, I mean, it's like, I don't think anybody should, if you enjoy drawing, you should never give up the drawing. Maybe it's the fucking work you're doing that you don't like. Just change what you're doing.
Right.
I do that all the time. It's like, maybe it's the medium you're working in. Maybe it's the sketchbook you're working in. I mean, I'll have 5 sketchbooks going all at the same time because one sketchbook will just the magic just isn't working with this fucking thing. It's just nothing good comes out of this fucking sketchbook. So you got to put it away and bring out another sketchbook and try that one. And maybe the magic will come out of that one, but maybe it won't. You got to get another sketchbook then.
You know, that's really interesting. I have a friend who gambles a lot, and he's just like, sometimes a table's just bad luck. Sometimes a table's good luck. I mean,
it's the same thing.
You ascribe to that kind of energy.
There is magic. There is magic involved in making art. No matter what anybody fucking tells you, dude, there is magic in making it. You know, when a movie gets like any film that I've been on, it seems like it's impossible. That what they're doing is impossible.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about that so many times. Like,
it gives me chills.
Yeah. How can you make a fucking movie? Like, it's crazy.
There are so many moving parts, so much money changing hands, so many people that you're putting so much confidence in to do the job correctly.
Yeah.
Because if they fuck up, that's $100,000 down the toilet.
Right.
Just like that.
Yeah.
And it's such a massive undertaking.
So many variables. Yeah.
I've been on, you know, I don't know, 20, 25 films, and maybe 5 of them got made.
Really?
You know? Yeah. Yeah. I will work on movies and they will never get made. I was working on Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh.
Back in 2018, I think. They had called me up and said, we want to design.
They wanted to reboot it?
Wanted me to reboot fucking.
No, can I say just right now, because it's like probably one of my biggest inspirations in terms of like storytelling and everything. I'm glad that the reboot didn't take for whatever reason, because it's like the original. Like, I don't know how you could improve upon the original.
You can't.
I mean, I'm an old man saying
I agree. And, you know, when they called me up, I felt a little, you know, it was a little weird, because I always felt that Audrey 2 was a perfect
depiction,
monster from every perspective. That puppet was so perfect. The voice was so perfect.
Even the techniques and like how they made the lip sync those lips are just like
it was like
perfect.
3D.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you couldn't create that in 3D, because you know what I'll say. 3D can do a lot of things, but people easily dismiss it because it's in a computer. But this is all practical.
It was all practical. It was it was done so well.
Yeah.
I was blown away by it. The songs are great. The whole thing is just so awesome.
Right.
You know, but they hired me to do it, and I was very excited to do it. And I had gone out and I bought all these plants and stuff like that, and I was surrounded by it, and I was drawing Audrey. I'd done all these little animations with him and everything, and I worked on it for maybe I don't know, like a month or something like that. And then they, you know, I think the pandemic. It wasn't 2018. It was right before the pandemic, I think, and that's what killed it. Yeah,
wow.
It was 2019. Yeah, that's what killed it. And you know, a lot of jobs died that year. I mean, for everybody. I mean, there's so many movies that were canceled, and I mean, Hollywood pretty much shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, I was working on Justice League, or not Justice League. I was working on the Secret Wars, Marvel Secret Wars, the show, and I would get notices. Because I'm working remotely, so it's not, you know, it's not affecting me, but I would get the notices from the art department team and everything like that, and how, we got to close down because somebody got COVID. So they'd have to close down for a fucking week. And it's like, man, it's just, it's such a struggle.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, Hollywood's doing real well with it, though, I think. They're doing a very good job of keeping people, and I heard the NBA is doing really well keeping people healthy, too.
Yeah.
You know, some sports teams and everything. So, you know, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
So you got this Little Shop of Horror gig. I thought it was really interesting, because we had talked the other day about the work coming across your plate, because there's an anxiety of like, once the gig is gone, what's going to be the next thing? And this is a gig environment, obviously. I mean, unless you're like under contract with somebody that they're like, you're always my go-to person, or you're like that lead developer.
But that's not, you know, I mean, it's like, that's a very rare thing to be, you know, to have somebody that just is going to use you. I mean, with Guillermo, that was a very rare thing for him to take me on and keep me employed for as many years as he did.
So you started working with Guillermo del Toro with Pacific Rim?
No, with
or was it
it was actually for Carnival Row. That was the first thing he hired me for. I was on it for like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that got canceled.
Yeah.
It was going to be a movie, and it got canceled, and then it got reborn as a show on Amazon. And they did use some of the concepts that we did during that push, so it was pretty cool.
So, not to jump forward, but I would love to hear how you got connected with Guillermo del Toro.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was
What year is this?
it was 2014, I think. And
Yeah.
I had done Comic-Con a couple times in like 2009 or 2010. And I don't like crowds. I'm very I get freaked out being around a lot of people.
Yeah.
I just don't like it,
Yeah.
It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. Anyways, Jen is I remember Jen saying how a friend of ours, an illustrator, had gotten discovered there by
And you have
Guillermo.
been doing it for a while because I think like you were going to like C2E2
Well,
or
I was doing those around here, but I wasn't doing the Comic
you
Con
didn't go
out in
out
San
west.
Diego
Yeah.
because I didn't want to do it again. It's such a big
Too
undertaking,
much
and you got to
stress.
pack everything up, and you got to ship it there, and then you got to set up this big space there. And I didn't want to do it, but Jen is just like, we had found out that a friend of ours had gotten hired by Guillermo the year before, and Jen's
And
like,
was
dude,
discovered through Comic Con.
through Comic Con, he
Okay.
walked into his space and he hired him for Pacific Rim.
Uh-huh.
And Jen had found out about this, and she's just like, Vince, you got to go back to Comic Con. I said, I don't want to do it. It's too much work. It's too hard. She's just
Again,
like,
it's the same theme. Too much work, too hard, but then you got to do it anyway.
got to do it anyways. I mean, Jen really was the driver of the whole thing. I honestly, I did not believe I would meet Guillermo or any other famous person ever.
But you had the preparedness, you just didn't have the opportunity, and that's what it makes. It's like when it's like you're locked and loaded and ready to go. You're just waiting for that opportunity, and then you're ready to hit the ground running. And that's what the opportunity was at Comic Con.
Well, yeah, we went to Comic Con, and we bought it. We got a big 10-foot by 10-foot space. We hung all the paintings on the walls, and we got all my prints from Magic the Gathering and all that kind of stuff. And we were selling stuff.
Yep.
And one of the mornings, I'm sitting there, and it was nobody had come in yet, and this big heavy guy comes walking into the space, and he's just wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, and he's got a Mexican Luca mask on.
A luchador type of thing.
Yeah, Lucha Libre kind of thing. And he's just looking around. He's got all these bags and stuff like that, like he's been buying art and shit. And he's like looking at all the stuff and everything. And he just comes over the table, and I'm drawing or something like that. And I look up, and he's looking down at me, and it's just like he pulls the mask a little bit away from his face so he could talk. And he's like, "My name is Guillermo del Toro, and I want you to work for me." I tell this story all the time.
Wow.
I've told it on several other blogs, so I know if anybody hears this blog, whatever. I did tell the story before, whatever, stupid. But he just said it, and I'm looking at him. I honestly, I did not believe that it was Guillermo del Toro. I was like, because she called it, because Jen called it, and I was just like, what the?
It's almost like it was set up.
It can't be possible.
Yeah.
It just cannot be fucking possible. And I'm like, he's just like, I want to buy some of these books. Why don't you write your phone number on the back of the book? I'm like, okay. I mean, if you're Guillermo, why don't you just take the books for free? And he's like, no. I support the arts. And he brought out $100 bill, and he threw it on the table, and he took the books, and he walked away. He said, I'll be calling you. He walks away, and I'm like, oh, all right, whatever. Okay. I honestly, it was just so bizarre that I couldn't, and I called up Jen. I'm like, yeah, this guy came in here. He said he was Guillermo del Toro. I think it was Guillermo del Toro.
But you couldn't tell because he was wearing a luchador mask.
So,
that's so funny.
So 2 weeks later, his producer called me up and said, we want you to come out next Tuesday and join the team and work on our new production, this Carnival Row thing. So I worked on that for 6 weeks with a team of guys. They're all great artists. Keith Thompson was there, who was a guy. He actually just got through designing all the new Cenobites for the Hellraiser movie. Guy Davis was there. He designed all the monsters for Guillermo's Cabinet of Curiosities and for Antlers and stuff like that.
Right.
Alan Williams, which is the guy that got hired from Pacific Rim the year before.
Okay, that's what was
He's
the impetus.
An amazing pencil artist. This guy just does these cool demons and shit like that, and just he's like a pencil genius. This other guy, Sean Murray, who's he does like these insane pencil fantasy environments that like go on for miles, and he puts out these wizard books and stuff. He's just another genius artist. It was a really great little team we had, and then after that was over, Guillermo had kept Guy Davis and myself behind to work on Shape of Water.
Right.
And we worked on that for like 2 weeks. I think Guy stayed a little bit longer and helped him out with some more stuff. but I only worked for like 2 weeks, and then that movie came out, and that was like the first movie that came out that I had worked on, and I had done design work for like
That was your very first movie that
that
you
was my
saw that
very
you were.
first movie,
Wow.
yeah, that I saw in a theater.
How'd that feel?
Oh, it was incredible seeing my name on the scroll.
Yeah.
And now the really fascinating thing is working in the movies is that you could just be sitting watching TV and a movie could come on that you worked on.
Yeah.
And it's just so bizarre
Yeah.
that oh, I worked on that, I
Right.
worked on the Predator movie, the one before this last one,
Uh-huh.
and I did the storyboards on that. And I had gone in.
That's not Predator Alien. There was another one.
No, there was the one in between. It was called the Predator, and
Uh-huh.
it was another predator was genetically altered to become a bigger, badder ass predator that was hunting this other predator that
I
was
see.
on Earth. Okay,
Okay.
and they had the guy that wrote Lethal Weapon, this director Shane Black,
Yeah.
and he did all those the '80s kind of great banter conversational kind of movies and stuff like that, and that's exactly what this Predator was. It was really fun. It had a great cast of characters, um and they had to redo a bunch of scenes at the end because they had to cut all this CG out of it that they had planned for. So they brought me in to reboard like the
Okay.
whole end of the movie.
Wow.
And
So as a concept artist, you're also doing board work. I
well,
mean,
for this, I
Okay.
only did board work. I did no concept art work for this.
okay.
And he just hired me, brought me out to LA.
Yeah.
I sat in a hotel right outside the studio, just drawing my ass off. And because I'm not union, they could abuse me.
Yeah.
So I was working like 18 hours a day, like fucking serious hours, because a storyboards it's a lot of work, and
Yeah.
then you do a board, and then he's just like, oh yeah, I want this changed, and want we go in this direction. Oh, we're going to change the script here, so we're going to go in this direction. So things would constantly be in change and turned over all the time. So I did this really cool scene with the guy, one of the big predators biting the head off of this guy, and it's a really obvious scene, and seeing that action happen. It's instead of designing a monster, I'm designing an action, and it's just as fun to me. It's awesome because you see exactly what you drew on the screen,
Yeah.
exactly in the same way. It's just so cool, man.
Yeah. It's like it's almost like you are the director when it comes down to like certain things.
Yeah, I mean, they're describing everything to you, and how to do it all and everything, but you're interpreting what they say,
Right.
and it's just a really great thing to do. Boards are fun. They're just fun as hell, man.
So when you started, like, so you're doing concept art and boards just kind of is begotten from that,
Yeah,
or does like,
I don't know how I got that gig. To tell you the honest God truth, how I got that Predator gig. Somebody that I work with in an art department somewhere must have, or a producer must have just mentioned my name to him, and he just gave me a call, and flew me out there.
right.
So I don't know, like, I don't know how I get most of the jobs. People call me out of the blue. I don't know how it happened.
I mean, like, I don't know if you could talk about it. Like you told me the most recent experience you
right.
had. I don't know if you're allowed to talk
No,
about
I
it.
could talk about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I think this is one of the coolest stories ever, because you're talking about you don't know who gets your name or who asks for your name.
Right.
So,
Well, in that situation, I knew who it was
Yeah.
because a friend of mine I had worked with Guillermo. He's an editor. He actually edited Nightmare Alley. He
okay.
was the main editor on that, and I had worked with him years ago. We were all starting out we were starting out at the same time in 2014. And just getting our feet wet. And he was working with Guillermo as an assistant editor. And over time, he's working on a bunch of different movies and everything like that. And he had gotten hired from this dude, and he calls me up. And I just pick up the phone and just say, "Hey, what's going on, dude?" "Oh, Cam, hey, how's it going, dude? Hey, what's up?" He's just like, "Yeah, so I got this dude. I want to give him your information. He really wants to work with you. I've been talking you up a lot. He would love to work with you." I'm like, "Okay, who's the director?" She's like, "It's Francis Ford Coppola."
That's fucking amazing.
And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, Francis Ford Coppola, dude." I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" He's like, "No, dude. I know it's fucking weird, right? But yeah, he wants to fucking meet you." And I'm like, "Okay, so what do I got to do?" He's just like, "Well, I'll have the producers and everything contact you. So, Francis wrote me an email, and he was very polite and very cool, and he was just like, I'm working on this new Megapolis movie, and I need some help doing some stuff, a couple weeks of work, some boards, some concepts, some stuff, just get your perspective, just see how things are going. Like, sure. Yeah, I'd love to. That'd be great. This is all over email. He's like, okay, well, I want to come meet you. I'm like, okay. He's like, so where are you? I'm like, I'm in Chicago. And he's like, okay. And he had a producer. I'll set something up. And they're like, okay, you come down and meet me at Midway Airport. And we meet in a little office down there. He flies in on his private jet, flies in just for an hour. He sits with me and tells me about his movie. And he asked me if I would like to be part of it. Like, fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Whatever you want me to do, I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, he was really kind, really nice, great guy. And we hugged, shook hands, and that was it. He left and
got on his plane and he went out into the sunset.
Got in his jet and flew away.
Uh-huh.
And then I went home and I did some boards, I did some concepts, and it was great. He was really cool. I think that he was very spread out thin because he had a lot of things going on, so I didn't get to talk to him as much as I would have liked. But I'm sure I'm gonna,
That's
run into him again.
beginning
in the
of the
future,
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a budding relationship.
That's so exciting, man.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it, man. It was bizarre.
Right.
Bizarre. Because I mean, everything that you say to the guy, everything that you think, that a quote in your head is from one of his movies.
Of course.
And you sit there and you'll bring up another movie and he'll say, oh yeah, that was my sister was in that. Or my nephew was in that.
Right.
Or, oh yeah, my other nephew was in that.
Yeah, the Coppola
and
family.
you just bring up
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
and he's just, oh yeah, I was really close to that one. And it's wow. It's like, he did Apocalypse Now, The Godfather, Godfather 2, Godfather 3, fucking Dracula.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, the conversation. I mean,
yeah, the conversation's
he's
so
just
great.
I mean, he's like the Godfather of film. You
Yeah.
know, he is the Godfather of film, and everybody
It's measured up
must
against
kneel
it.
down
Yeah.
to the Godfather. Kiss the ring, baby.
Yeah.
You
Did he
know?
bring you a bottle of wine? It's like, this is from my.
No, he didn't do that.
Yeah.
I would have appreciated it, but I'm fine. Just meeting me was plenty for me. I mean,
Yeah.
I could, rest easy now. I met Francis Ford Coppola.
Seriously.
It's like, wow,
Like, so I guess kind of just putting things together, do you feel like successful? Do you feel like you told me something interesting, you work on something and however it comes to you is great, but then it's like you're always thinking about what the next gig is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, when a gig ends, there's an instant feeling of emptiness, because you've been so invested, because I throw 100% of myself into it, and you're so invested, and you have all these people that want to talk to you and help you and get you to this finish point, and they're willing to do anything to try to make sure that you're happy and you're creative, and when it ends,
It's romantic.
it's very romantic. It's like a love affair with a job.
Yeah.
And then when it ends, it's like you just got broke up with, and you have this instant feeling of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go into a depression for days,
Yeah.
and I'll try to, focus on my own work to try to break myself out of that despair, um, but
Yeah.
you still feel it. You know what I mean when you're
Yeah.
working on
Yeah.
on something that's really getting your going, and you're really passionate about it. And then you always think that there's other things that you could have done to make it better, to do better job,
Right.
and you feel like, well, what if I did something that is going to make it so I'm never going to get another job again, or and you beat yourself up and you think that you're never going to fucking work again.
Right.
And then or somebody will call, and a couple weeks later you get a call and then say, yeah, I really want to work, or we're going to do this thing, let's do it. Yeah. And then they don't call you back for that you're totally ghosted then.
Right.
It's like, then you're in this position where you, oh, well, should I contact them? Should I try to talk to them?
Uh-huh.
What should I do?
But you're more of a hands-off guy. It's like you let the work at this point now. You let the work come to you.
I try to. I mean, I will start reaching out if I feel like I'm not I feel like I'm running out of money.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I'll go and start banging the.
So
the
you kind of
pavement.
work on your passion projects as an interim, maybe as a little thing to kind of
Yeah.
ease you out of whatever, kind of
Yeah.
keep your mind busy.
Exactly.
But after a while, you're kind of like, it's time for me to do something again.
Yeah.
You might
Yeah.
kind of put some feelers out.
Yeah. I'll just send some emails to some people that I work with in the past to see if they heard anything going on
Mm-hmm.
that I could jump on.
Yeah.
And I'll do anything. I do straight up art department work too, where I'm just doing paint overs of SketchUp models and stuff like that for the set designers.
Right.
So that's kind of a good regular gig that you could, as an artist in the movie industry, that you can get that isn't, it doesn't take a lot of skill. It just takes you knowing how to do photo bashing and
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit of SketchUp work and some general lighting. If you could figure all that kind of stuff out, you could do that kind of work.
Right.
And if you're good at 3D, you're even going to be better off doing it.
The stuff that you've worked on, it's like you worked on Emmy Award winning, Oscar winning, when I was just in Guadalajara, we got a tour of Talla de Chucho where they had like the B crew for the Guillermo's Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of the areas, they had like some mock-up stages of the teal-looking tiles. Where they did something like when Guillermo had an exhibit that was happening there in Guadalajara. They had some staging of the creature from Shape of Water, and they did some set building. And I was just like, they wouldn't allow you to take any pictures while you were in there. I was like, I wish I could take a picture of this to send to you, because it's like, you're talking about, you see your work on television. It's like, I'm seeing stuff that you designed. You helped design, like, kind of.
I didn't design the fish man. It was the tank.
Yeah, the
I
tank
helped with
holding
the
area,
tank.
right? Yeah.
But when I was working for Guillermo, Guillermo put us in his apartment, which was, he had several apartments inside this loft building, and big windows looked out on Toronto and everything, and real bright. And he had a bunch of stuff from his movies inside the apartment that we worked in. Mm. He had the false leg that had the gold in it from Devil's Backbone. Wow. He had the model of the at this point he had the model of the Strain vampire. Ooh. Okay, so it was like a half-size model of the main giant vampire guy that was sitting in the apartment staring at us the whole time. And a bunch of other art that he has from a bunch of different things were all laying around in there, like little skulls and stuff in like a curio shop type stuff. I mean, that's his whole thing. I mean, he has a whole house that's like a museum, right, in LA of all this stuff, and that's what that traveling show, right, that had all that work in there. And at one point he actually had the full size Fishman from Shape of Water inside that room.
That was what I saw at Talla de Chucho, where they had it just standing in front of that tile display. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah. I mean, but yeah, I could only imagine,
Yeah, that guy, the guy that played the Fishman, he's really cool. Yeah. Really cool guy too. Very, very alien like, he moves around. He's very thin, very tall. Mm-hmm. He's very, very interesting guy. He played Abe Sapien also. Oh. And he played the Fishman, and he played one of the vampires in The Strain, and he actually is Sharuk, the character Sharuk in the Discovery show. Uh-huh. The Paramount Plus Star Trek show.
Oh, I know who you're talking
Discovery.
about. Yeah.
The guy.
I haven't watched it in a while. I really liked
alien.
it, but I didn't pay for that streaming service, so I got to catch up on all that Star Trek stuff.
It's a good streaming service. I mean, I love Paramount Plus because I'm a big Star Trek fan.
Me too.
And
so just on the spot, Star Trek, Star Wars is just different. Do you have a preference?
Well, it's like Star Trek is for the smarter people, and then Star Wars is for the general masses.
It's a little bit more commercial.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars, because it's so, everything's bound together. They don't really go with real gravity and real how things work in space and stuff like that. It's more fantasy than Star Trek is. Star Trek, they try to keep things a little more on the how
the
the
realism.
realism of the scientific.
That's what you were digging, I remember about, and they're rebooting it again. But when they did the first reboot of Battlestar Galactica,
Oh, that was great.
and what I mean, so that's what I really like about your work. Kind of going back again, is like you kind of come from a real place, and I think that's. I mean, you could create the universe that's created by Lucas is wonderful, and they're doing some
I love
awesome
it. Oh,
storytelling. And
Endor
yeah,
is amazing.
yeah,
It's the best Star Wars ever made, as
yeah,
far as I'm concerned. It was great.
hmm
And honestly, I thought that Rogue One was the best Star Wars made up until that point,
yeah. I agree. I'm
too.
like, yeah, Rogue One is my
It's
favorite
more
of the
it's
newer
got that
ones.
grown up sense about it, you know.
Right. Yeah, yeah, like real stakes.
Hmm.
And it's just kind of coming from a real human drive to make things better and the struggle and everything like that.
The
Yeah.
Cassian character is just so perfect too, and they really pull off the fascist
Hmm.
kind of government thing really well in Endor. They really go into that, how those people are and why they are the way they are. And yeah, yeah.
So anyway, let's go back to you're working and you're in this wonderful Toronto environment. Guillermo's got kind of a library-esque home in which you're developing this
We're developing for everything that we did, we were doing there. When
and
we
you're working on multiple projects.
Yeah, we worked on many projects together. I worked on a Fantastic Voyage
Hmm.
reboot with him for like 6 months,
Hmm.
and that got canceled.
Hmm.
And it was such a because we worked on it for so long, and it was because the same thing happened with Pacific Rim 2. We had worked on it for 6 months, and then it got canceled, and it's just heartbreaking when you.
So even at that level, though, I mean, you could have a name like Guillermo behind something, or anyone, and it's just a matter of
The, that's
momentum.
what I'm. That's what we were talking. Okay, this brings it back to the miracle, the magic of making movies is that all those moving parts, and what I'm talking. I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, the Devil in the White City. They've been trying to make that for what 20 years.
Yeah,
They've had DiCaprio behind it. They have Scorsese behind it. They have all these big names behind it, but they still can't get it made.
yeah,
And it's just magic.
right.
It's just magic, man. And anything that we do, I mean, one of the reasons why I love animating so much is because you're making something that isn't alive, and it will be there forever. It'll
Right.
be alive forever. It'll be alive longer than you're alive.
Hmm.
You know, it's so cool. I mean, it's one of the things that I love about claymation and stop motion in general too, is because all those things just aren't alive. They're this, balsa wood and fucking and cloth and shit like that and hair and wire, and
Yeah,
they make these things and
and they
move
hold a
around.
place in your heart, and there's just like, yeah, they're there
Yeah,
forever.
yeah, man, and it's this is coolest thing ever. I think everybody should try animation. Every artist, anybody that gets into drawing or sculpting, everybody should try it
Hmm.
and play around with it, because it really is. It really it helps you stay focused, because it's such a time consuming and monotonous thing to do.
Right.
It's creative, and but you have to have the long game in mind. You can't just sit down and sketch an animation out in an hour like you would
Right.
with just a drawing. This is something that's going to take you days to do. Then you got to know programs so you could get it all into the system, so you could actually output it into some kind of media that you could share it with. And you learn so much from that process. It helps you be able to have the patience to work on that drawing or that painting for 5 days,
Right.
or 10 days. And some people work months on something. I
Hmm.
mean, if you're going to spend all that time on it, it's best to have some experience with some monotony,
Hmm.
so you don't get bored,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, you touched upon something I think is really interesting. Is like that kind of method, stop motion, as an example, but just art creation in general in terms of telling stories as the technology gets better and as we're not working on film anymore, we're working digitally, so you're seeing the results instantly, you're able to
That's
do so.
great.
That's all great, but like at a certain point, now we're looking at AI, and as a
Okay.
concept artist,
Yeah.
technically it's a double-edged sword. It's like it makes it so fast and efficient, but now we've gotten to the point where it's like the self checkout where we're removing the person.
Well, this is an ongoing. I mean, the new thing is that this AI, like the Dali and Midjourney and all that kind of stuff, that is giving all image artists a coronary. Honestly, it's photographers. You know, Getty Images is, they're saying right now that they're not going to use any AI art, AR photos or any of that kind of stuff. But eventually, it's just going to happen.
It's going to be relative.
Because you're not going to be able to tell the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even now. I mean, I'm seeing people produce AI photos of people that don't exist that are just like any other portrait, any other picture that you've ever seen. I mean, it's precise. It's a person, but it's nobody that exists. It's something that we were doing with photo bashing back at Midway in the early 2000s, and that was like this big innovative thing for video game characters to put photo textures and mash them all together to make totally unique people, and then build your models off of that and map that stuff right on there.
Right.
And you'd get these really great characters. And now they're doing it with AI with a prompt just like that.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the art versions of it have been trained by current artists, the living artists that their work is pretty much copyrighted. When you have like I listened to this essay that was done by this guy named Steve Zapata, which is really great artist, and he sits there and he draws a picture, and he tells this essay about all this stuff that he's learned about AI and how what is a Stable Diffusion has a data set of 5 billion pieces of image art
Mm-hmm.
to draw from to create its images that you prompt in there. And I'm not going to say that AI isn't art, because it is art. It's just art
The
not
age
made
old
by
question.
a person.
Yeah, it's like, what is art? Yeah.
No, but that's the thing. I mean, I could just say that chair is art. Anything is art. It's like, it's just whatever you think it is. And so it is art. It's just not. It's something I never thought that I'd ever hear, that art can be completely
Humanless.
forever.
Yeah.
The AI, that's going to kill.
do you
It's
think-
going to kill art.
So
it's
wait,
going to kill it.
Let me ask you a question, because I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this, because I agree with what you're saying, but maybe more than one thing can be true at the same time. So, as a stop motion artist enthusiast, along the trajectory of entertainment, there's always been like, this is the death of stop motion. Whatever it may have been, one thing motion capture, or, computer animation, or, it comes along that every so often they're saying this is the death of the medium.
Agreed.
Digital, the death of the medium,
Agreed.
everything. However, it can also be just another tool of the Swiss Army knife that is storytelling.
Yeah, and I get it, and I totally agree with that. That is a possibility. I totally agree with it. The only issue that I have with AI is that when you have massive for-profit companies controlling a data set that they did not pay for, okay, all those images that those machines are learning from are images that are done by artists.
Mm-hmm.
They're not done by nobody. They're done by us. So
Yeah.
that's how they're trained. So if they're all trained on us, then all you got to do is say, "Oh, I need a piece of art. I want it to be a monster in the style of Vincent Proce, and I want it to look like an ink drawing, and I want it to have a skeleton, and I want it to have a graveyard," and then it'll just make the picture.
Have you ever tried to plug in that formula that you just said?
No, and I won't. I mean, it's not. I think that it's fine as a tool for for filmmaking. If you're a production designer or director that is trying to get a film made and you can't afford to hire a concept artist, fine, do it that way. You're on an independent film, you could do it that way. That's great, whatever. It's just the idea that it's that art that they're getting is being trained by artists. It's not being trained by work that isn't copyrighted.
Right.
And that's wrong. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
At least there should be some sort of compensation. Now, I'm not going to be a crying, whiny bitch about it and complain about it
I mean,
online and
it's
all
show
that kind of stuff.
business. I mean,
It's just the way it is. And
yeah.
like when photography happened, everybody was just like, oh, nobody's going to need paintings anymore.
Right.
Okay. But what it does is it'll make it so more people will be able to make art, and more people will be competing using AI against people that have spent their lifetimes creating art. And that's the heartbreak, is that when this guy that just came up with a prompt can do a piece of art just as good as me, and he's going to do it in 5 minutes and get 5 versions of it, and it's going to take me a day, maybe 2, and I'm not going to have 5 versions. It's, and a corporation wants it. Well, what do we need to hire an artist for?
Yeah.
And one of the things that Zapata guy was talking about was that how when we get ads on our phones and social media and stuff like that, and it seems like, oh, I was just talking to somebody about that, and then you see this ad that's exactly what you're talking about. It's exactly what you want. Well, what happens in the future when a company is able to know the story that you're talking about? You want to make this story, and I got this idea for this story. It's about a chimpanzee. He's got a samurai sword. He's suicidal, and he lives in a future world that's made out of robots and stuff like that. You just say that, and then the computer makes a full 2-hour movie based on that, using all the things that it learned from all the data sets of movies that it's watched over the years, and it is exactly tailored to what your taste is and exactly what you want.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you don't get that opportunity to make that piece of art, to make that story.
Right.
And the corporation gets all the money.
Right.
And they get all the perks for it, and it's just a faceless giant business then that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, I'm on this whole trip right now that I don't think anybody should be a billionaire. I think that fucking billionaires shouldn't fucking exist ever.
Right.
Nobody should have that kind of power.
Right.
One person should not have more power than a fucking country.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense to me, and why. Yeah. It's just a broken system. Our capitalist system is just completely out of control, and social media is all part of that. And this AI is all part of it. It's because we let corporations. I mean, it's fucking dystopia. It's what we've been watching on TV.
But
for
it's
fucking
dystopia.
50
But
years.
is it also? I'm again just challenging it because this is what I do.
Do it.
That is the premise of Star Trek and going into the holodeck. Being able to create something artificially that is as real as something.
I'm
and
not
could have
saying
anything.
that I want the Star Trek world. There's an episode in Next Generation where they're on this planet and there's all these super intelligent kids all around, and they can't have children on their planet. So they had to steal a bunch of kids from the Enterprise and bring them to their planet. And all these kids are like artists, and they're writers, and they're musicians, and they're all these things. And this one kid that was an artist, of course I'm going to pay attention to that most.
Sure.
And they give him this tool, and they're like, okay, do some art. And this tool's just a laser. And he runs it over this piece of wood, and it makes this beautiful dolphin. And I'm just like, oh my God. It was like, I'm like, what, that's art? The kid just thought of it, and then he just ran a laser over something, and it just made what he thought of. That's not art.
Yeah.
That doesn't take any fucking skill.
Right.
That kid, what kind of imagination is that? And this is what I'm saying. It's just like, if you could just think of something and then all of a sudden it's there.
Right.
That's the death of art, man. That's the fucking death of it. Because the process of making art is the thing that's so awesome. That's the part that's the fun part. It's not the outcome.
Right.
Who gives a fuck about that? I make 1 million of these things. I pack them in fucking drawers. I don't care about the end result. What I care about is what it feels like doing it and giving birth to something that's never existed.
Well, like you're talking about the magic of something. It's like I've seen plenty of great ideas for films that it's all about the execution, the environment. There's a lot of things that have to come together magically, or you could see. I feel like I have the ability of saying that is a producer decision. This is a producer decision. So when I start seeing a film or any type of story for that matter start turning in a direction that doesn't seem true or doesn't like speak to the world, the universe they're creating, it is kind of like the death of magic.
Yeah.
It's almost like, science was going to be like, it's like science versus magic or whatever. It's like science is the death of magic or whatever. I don't know if,
But I mean, for me, science is magic. I
Sure.
mean, honestly, it's just it's an explanation.
It's a magic we don't understand and we're like in still pursuit of.
We won't fully understand it ever. We're always going to find new reasons to research and to explore and all that. And that's the thing. I mean, with I could get it if with AI you're going to replace hamburger flippers and truck drivers and even airplane pilots and doctors and stuff like that. And this is why I say there should be no billionaires, because then you'll have to have a universal basic income, and it'll all be like some exclusivity of living in a particular country that has all these perks,
Right.
because their company makes so much money.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's really about that kind of getting rid of that kind of fucking. I don't know where I was going with that.
No, I hear what you're saying. It's just, I guess, I mean, you're saying that that it's happening within our lifetime.
It's so
It's interesting.
surprising.
It's depressing.
It's surprising.
Oh, I think
mean,
it's depressing.
No,
Okay.
well, I mean, it is a little depressing because I fear that the death of art. I literally fear the death of art. Like in the next 100 years, that art is going to be something that people used to do. That we just don't do it anymore because we have all these computers that do it, and people just don't want to go through the time of learning a skill that's so antiquated.
Yeah.
I mean, like, when the loom came out, everybody, how many people lost their jobs because of that?
Right.
But now, they ended up going and working in factories and stuff like that, which isn't as glamorous a job, but then now factories are being replaced with robots. So people are moving on and having to do other jobs. And it's like,
Well, you see also like the anti-technology movement among artists, whether it's pressing vinyl or hand painting signs.
right.
Or,
But
I mean,
again,
but
it
that
becomes more exclusive, and it becomes a smaller group
right.
that are able to do these skillful things. And I don't think that
They become like artisans.
that artists won't exist anymore. But again, it'll just be more like,
How are you going to make a living? How do you do
you
what
won't
you love?
make a living doing it.
Yeah.
You just won't. I mean, maybe in fine art, because it'll still become it'll still be like a thing.
I mean, unless like again, show business can impart a tool, but are you saying, one of the things I like seeing about animated films or just films in general is like I always sit through the credits of every film I watch.
Oh, I do too.
And you see amount of people that were employed for that, and you talk about, job opportunities or, giving people purpose to a degree. It's I mean, when you take away something, what do you give in return?
Yeah.
So I guess that's the one thing about the business of storytelling versus the art of storytelling. You could put together any business of storytelling, and sure, you might be able to pull it off here and there, or people will think this is good enough versus this is good.
Right, but a lot of times you do have to come to the conclusion, well, this is good enough because of time or whatever reason. But I get shielded a lot from all the horrible things that happen when making a movie because
You specialize in your part.
because I'm a specialist, and I'm more treated like an actor than I'm treated like a person in art department because I'm a specialist.
Right.
But when I talk to assistants and I talk to other people that work within the system, it's really, really hard and really stressful and low pay and all kinds of hard things that happen. You get yelled at, or you get, you fuck something up, and you end up, getting berated for 6 hours,
Right.
I mean, they deal with such other things. And I didn't even think of that. And I remember one time I brought it up to an art director that I was working with. And she was like, yeah, you got it good over on your side of the fence there,
Right.
pal. It's really hard on this end, and
So kind of just speaking to that then, in terms of the next gig, excuse me, in terms of your next gig, how do you choose what you'll work on?
I don't. I just do whatever they throw at me. I
So-
don't choose.
So somebody said, like, you have a rate,
I have a daily rate, and I tell them that's what my rate is. If they're willing to do it, then we go at it. Then we work together. But
and you've worked on projects that you've felt like strongly about, and you've also worked on things that you haven't felt strongly about.
yeah, I mean, that's with everything. You're gonna work in that situation throughout your career, you're going to work on stuff that you really love, and you're going to work on stuff that you don't love so much. But you always want to give it 100%, always 100% of what you got, because you know it's really important that you're not a dick in the film industry. I mean, if you're a prick, unless you're like, Nick Cage or fucking, Francis Ford Coppola, you know, you
Yeah.
can't be a fucking asshole, because you just won't get hired again.
Right.
People.
Not that you're saying that either of those guys are assholes.
No, they're awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, you
Well,
unless you're a fucking super high paid fucking actor, and I'm telling you, dude, like Tom Cruise, the guy's the nicest guy in the fucking world.
Mhm.
He's super cool. I haven't met him, but I know people that have, and you would think that somebody like that, being that rich and that powerful, would be kind of a dick, but they're not. They're super fucking cool, super into
Yeah.
everything. Guillermo, he's the fucking cool, just awesome dude that he just walks into rooms like bringing love into the room. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So I think it's really important for people to, keep their egos and their emotions in check.
I mean, one of the things I say to my students is that is like I know some very talented assholes, and I know some very competent, great people that I would rather work with than the very talented assholes, because
Yeah.
it's just like, I mean, we're not doing brain surgery. This is like, I mean, obviously it's magic to put something together, and how sometimes how a film is made, like you said, you know, it's impossible that
Yeah,
films get made.
it's impossible.
So when you're in that environment, it's just like, why wouldn't you want to have fun doing the thing that drives you? Like you were saying in the beginning of this, it's like you do these things because it's who you are, and what else are you gonna do?
What else are you gonna do?
And it's like, why wouldn't you want to be around other people who like feel that same passion and camaraderie and community?
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you have one person in there that maybe just is negative or depressed all the time, or don't have anything nice to say, or always have some negative thing, that will show, and it'll bring everybody else down in the room.
Yeah.
And then, when you don't feel good, you don't make good work.
Yeah.
Feeling good is part of what is having that energy between people. It's like you're working, you're bouncing off each other and everything like that. And a lot of times, sometimes people want to have, a healthy competition within a group.
Sure.
And I get that, but when you have people compete against each other, that, artists in general aren't very uh, social people, just because it's the nature of our work, is that we're alone a lot of the time. So when we're put together, we have to have our social skills
Challenged.
challenged.
Yeah.
And you're in that situation, and people will literally try to say things to slip you up, to try to make you feel
Mm-hmm.
angry or bad, because you're in a competition with other people.
And you've been in those environments
I've
before?
been in those environments. I'm not going to say with who or what, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're in those environments, and that's what you got to deal with. And a lot of times, you could be in that environment, and you might not want to go back to that kind of environment, and you might want to just say, fuck it, I'm not gonna work in this kind of scenario anymore, because it's too much stress.
Well, like one of the things that I've kind of come to terms with, and I've always been this way, but I've never really kind of worked it out, is the uselessness of competition to defeat someone versus to raise the tide for us all. It's like to challenge somebody, and like you said, you've worked with artists, or you've like found inspiration in people whose art you wish you could emulate or draw from, and that might raise your skill level, or
Always will raise your skill level.
Yeah.
When you're working with people that are better than you, your skill level will always jump a notch.
Yeah.
Always, 100% of the time, dude.
Yeah.
Always.
And that's kind of the healthy version of competition in my mind. It's like, but if there's someone who feels like they have to be
right,
better
but then
than you,
if somebody's fucking with you, giving you false information, changing the rules, this kind of shit, just to fuck you up, so you're not putting out 100% of your work. It could be little things, it could be big things. It's either way. But at the same time, if you're around a bunch of people that aren't very good,
Mhm.
that just can't draw very well, it brings you down a notch.
Sure.
It really does. And being in situations like that, where you feel like there's no creativity, like the creativity is being tamped down
Mhm.
by that lack of skill. in the room.
Yeah, and
You
those
know,
oppressive environments aren't good for creativity, much
no,
less
not even
anything
a little
else.
bit. I mean, I've never really been into the open concept thing. In a lot of studios and a lot of, especially video game companies, will do these open concepts. It's like, how do you work in that fucking environment, man? I mean, it's like you're surrounded by people. People are over here talking and rocking out and doing whatever they're fucking doing, and people interrupting you all the time or walking by,
Mhm.
clopping their shoes. It's like, how are you going to concentrate in that situation?
Regardless of your background, even though we have a lot of things, that are similar parallels, it's like you can't do anything else. This is like who you are. It's where you come from.
And honestly, I wouldn't want to. Anyways, I'd rather be, you know, living on a street bench selling fucking,
Yeah.
sketches of people's faces, you know, than working in an office or
Uh-huh.
shoveling shit or whatever the fuck,
Yeah.
laying brick
Right.
like I
Right.
was doing. I couldn't do that now anyways. My body's so deformed from sitting at a desk for 25 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm excited that last year you were one of our new jurors for Mo Stop Mo.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, your specialty is obviously like, I mean, you're a director, you're a storyteller, you're a storyboard artist, you're a concept artist, you do visual development. And one of the things that we try to curate with Mo Stop Mo is finding somebody who's a professional in their field that, has really got great work and also can give feedback to these newer artists who are just kind of up and coming. And I know stop motion isn't necessarily your forte, but you've worked with like really renowned people, especially like more recently Guillermo. He's got Pinocchio coming out and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really cool that you're lending your skills and your feedback to people who are getting started or kind of making that connection, building that community of artists and storytellers. And
I enjoy it too. I mean, I loved doing it last year. I mean,
yeah,
I wouldn't have came back if I didn't like doing it. I mean,
yeah,
I I'm a video file or a movie file or whatever. I love movies. I love animation. I love anything visually, any visual media. I'm way into.
right,
And it's just a blast to do. And when you
cool.
see something shine out of there, something that just some spark, and you know that this person is gonna do something if they really apply themselves.
I'm looking forward to see, like, we're right on the cusp of you guys starting to see all the films, all the submissions, and one of the things you guys get to do with your specialties is choose that short and kind of speak to
Yeah,
your
which
area
I'll,
of
I'll be
expertise.
focusing on the visuals
Yeah.
of things, color, light, and
So like it's
set.
interesting because like oftentimes there's like we try to do a different artist for each specialty, which is hard because if something's really well executed, everyone wants to do that story.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm excited to see what your feedback's going to be, not only for them, but it's like I have one of the pleasures of seeing everybody's feedback before I send it out to
uh
all the filmmakers who submit their stuff. So I like seeing all these group things, and I have all those cards. We send out each card individually to each filmmaker, and it gives a couple, sentences of, what you felt about that. But when you guys elaborate, especially like last year, I think Bardo Bread was the film. Remember
yeah,
with
Bardo, yeah,
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 I think it was called Bardo Bread or something like that. But it did really, it's
yeah,
still continuing to do well in festivals, and that was your choice last year
yeah,
because of like the lighting and I mean just
yeah.
like the character design and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to me. All that part of it is, and I'm looking forward. I mean, you were just telling me about there was one that was really nice that you
yeah, yeah,
that you got in there, and I can't wait to see it.
yeah, yeah.
I don't care how long it is. I'll watch.
No, I mean honestly, it's like I'm just seeing some of the submissions and the biggest effort that Edwin and I have in curating a show that isn't too long but isn't too short is like figuring out, you know, how do we, such great work, such wonderful artists, but yeah, it's an effort. That's why I don't like, again, kind of circling back to competition one last time, is it's like I don't want to create a competitive environment. There's no awards in most festivals. It's just kind of like look at this beautiful shit that's coming out and look at what capabilities maybe you didn't see before and you might be inspired by, and we're all raising our game versus kind
Well,
of
yeah,
defeating.
and
Yeah,
you're giving all these people a platform to show their work. It's just one more platform.
yeah,
When you create a piece of film, you got to get it out there.
yeah,
And if you're not putting it into things, what did you spend all your time doing it for?
right,
I mean, you have to.
Well, I guess that's something I like. One last question to you is, I know a lot of artists who don't put their stuff out there.
You do?
Yes.
Really?
And it's interesting because I don't think you've ever done that. I think if anything, even though you're saying you're introverted, when I've seen you at like fests, cons or whatever, you're like right there, and you would just sit down. Somebody would ask for a drawing, and you've done a lot of design for Magic, The Gathering,
Yeah, yeah.
and you'll just kind of do a sketch, or you're always available, and it was never about money for you,
No.
but you put yourself out there all the time, and other than being introverted by nature, you are like happy to interact and create for people on an individual level.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah. In
it's
person, only in person.
yeah,
I
in
mean,
person,
I
yeah,
wouldn't
of
do
course,
that from home. I wouldn't do like commissions and stuff like that.
yeah,
That's
that's
a tough
commodity,
racket.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's hard to do that. But I mean, at shows and stuff, I love fans. I love people that want to come and look at the art and enjoy it. And
hmm
to me, that's it's a really great payoff and stuff. It's hard to do those things, but it's a good payoff when you do.
yeah,
I mean I mean, it's never really money making for me. You
yeah.
know,
Well, that's what again, why I think you're such a great juror for this festival is just like it's not about anything else. It's about the art, and you have a very clean cut way of saying, even it's like this is bullshit, or I didn't really dig this, but I dig this. It's like you're giving your sensibilities, and you're giving really good feedback from somebody who's gone through the process and developed a sensibility that I think a lot of people admire.
well, it's interesting you say that because I remember last year there was one that I watched that I literally got mad about because it seemed like they didn't put any effort into it,
Uh huh.
and it just seemed like they were almost making fun of the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
Like, dude, what the fuck is this? It's not even stop motion.
Yeah.
It's just some fucking guy with his iPhone and his dog or whatever with some stupid thing in it.
Uh huh.
I was just so I was angry that they would even fucking do that. It's like
Yeah.
you're almost like poking up everybody else that worked their asses off
Yeah.
for this to make something cool.
Right.
It's like you're poking them in the eye.
Right.
Just saying, oh, I could just do this. It's like the fucking AI assholes, these engineers that made this fucking thing. They're like, oh, I'm gonna make art so fucking Simon Stahlberg can't fucking ever work again. It's like, fuck you, dude. I mean, who the fuck do you think you are, man? It's like,
Right.
and plus your fucking AI art looks like shit. Okay, I can't see anything in there. It
Uh-huh.
fucking sucks.
So it's a double-edged sword if you're giving feedback. It's sometimes it's like this is great, or otherwise it's like, what are you doing?
Why are you even fucking doing this? It's like you're insulting the whole process.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I think that if you're going to produce a piece of art and you're going to put it in front of people, don't insult them
hmm
and don't, fucking put some effort into it, man.
Yeah.
Like, break your ass on it, dude, because it's really shows. It really, really fucking shows. And even if it sucks, I mean, there was a few on there that really were terrible, but because they put in such fucking effort
Yeah.
for it,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
But they're
great,
trying. Yeah.
because they're trying, and because of all the shit that they did on that,
Yeah.
they learn
Yeah.
of the shit that sucks, and
Yeah.
they know not to do that again. And that's you can't ever get better at doing anything unless you do it and you fail at it over and over and over again. You
Yeah.
got to fail at it
Yeah.
because if you don't fail, you'll never learn how to do it right.
But there's also that element. It's like you're putting your name on this. And is this your name? Is this
Yeah.
what you're representing?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know what you're talking about. I won't get specific, but I wonder when you come across somebody, what if that is the best they can do?
If that's the best they could do, get off the
Then
train,
there's,
pal.
There's a reckoning there.
Get off the fucking train because you don't
Yeah.
belong in this space. If that's the amount of effort
Yeah.
that it takes for you to do a piece of art and that's all you could do,
Yeah.
get off the train, go back to school,
Right.
or actually learn how to fucking do something.
Right.
Because this ain't your thing.
Right.
This ain't it. And it's
Fair enough.
brutal.
No, it's
it's
fair enough.
brutal.
But sometimes you need the wake up call. It's like sometimes it's like, hey, you're not going to be an actress. You're not going to be
dude. If you're gonna fucking tell a fish to climb a tree,
yeah.
It's like he ain't gonna fucking be able to do it. And if he judges himself on him climbing a fucking tree, he's gonna feel terrible about himself.
Right.
So you gotta fucking put a fish in water and let him do what they. You gotta find the thing that you are good at because everybody's good at something. I think it was Albert Einstein or one of those guys that said that everybody's born a genius.
Mm.
It's just a matter of finding what that thing is that you're a genius at doing.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that everybody's got something in them.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a matter. It's like for
I
me
agree.
with art, if you start drawing when you're 4 years old
Mm-hmm.
and you draw every day for the next 20 years,
Yeah.
you're going to be a pretty good fucking artist.
Yeah.
You know, because in that time your taste is going to grow, things are going to change, you're going to get better at your craft.
Right.
You're automatically going to get better. And sometimes, sure, you'll go down these paths. I mean, I would go on paths for years where I'd be making the same mistake over and over and over again, and I just won't see the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not
You're
because
too close to it.
no, it's not that, dude. It's just that I didn't learn how to see yet. I didn't learn how to see that particular angle or that particular shadow or that. I think that humans in general, our brains have triggers in them that open up when you are working those synapses for a long enough period of time. All of a sudden, one of those synapses will grow across onto the other side.
Yeah.
Okay, it'll fix across your hemispheres or something.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that thing clicks, and it's like now it's second nature. And you didn't know this before.
Right.
But for some fucking reason, something just snapped in your fucking head, and now you do that all the time. And it's easy now.
Yeah.
And before it was easy, it was really fucking hard to do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like
it's like learning to be a magician. How do you
but
do
there's
a
always
trick?
like this you're climbing up, and then you hit this edge, and then it's woo, it's downhill, and it's like woo, and it's like you got this new skill now
Yeah.
that you could use forever and
Yeah.
incorporate into these other skills that now you're picking up because you learned that skill. But
Right.
you wouldn't learn all the other things if you didn't have that one key element.
Right.
And this happens throughout an artist's life. I mean, every couple years, if you keep at it,
Mhm.
something's gonna click.
Yeah.
And it's gonna fold over. And it could come from anywhere. It could come from when I was a kid, I learned drawing shadows from Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
And I would like one of the ones that I had was the first Star Wars came out.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I was a huge Star Wars. I went to see it 35 times in the theater, you know. It was
Uh-huh.
$1.50 to go see the Star Wars. So I'd go and
Right.
see it every week. And I got the Mad Magazine of the Star Wars, and I remember it was a ink painted Star Wars, and everything was
Oh.
kind of exaggerated, but they
Of
all
course.
looked exactly like the characters, and the shadowing was beautiful, and the ships were beautiful, and the explosions, everything was perfect, and it was silly, and it was funny, and Princess Leia was sexy hot. You know, they made
Yeah.
her more sexy
Yeah,
in Mad
right, right.
Magazine, and it was just a short. It was like maybe 10 pages or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But it was just so awesome. I would lay there on the floor, just drawing that over and over and over again, drawing little characters, drawing the way the shadow, and then from that, I learned that there are different shadow,
Techniques.
light perspectives of the way the shadow
Good light
falls on the face.
sources. Yeah.
So then, as an
Mm.
artist, I started developing. Okay, there are 5 different ways that I put shadows on a face.
Mm.
And I only use those 5 different ways because I've trained myself to know those ways. So every time that I draw a face, I'm either going to have the shadow from right down top, or I'm going to have it coming from over here. Or I'm going to have it from behind him. The shadow is going to be in the front. There's going to be a light on both sides, and there's going to be a shadow down the middle. And I only do those whenever I draw a face. And then every once in a while, you know, I'll pick up another photograph and I'll draw from photograph, and I'll get a new
You'll discover a new. Yeah.
shadow scheme that then I'll utilize over and over again. And sometimes I'll forget an old one because I'm not using it very often. I'll go back to it later. You know, it's the same thing with mediums, or you move from medium to medium to have a wider repertoire of what you can do
Right.
in those downtimes when you're trying to, you know, make money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's pretty fascinating to see. Like, I mean, when I first started doing art, it's like you emulate what you admire. And it's like whatever's like driving you, you don't have that choice but to put pen to paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's definitely a need. It really is, man. It's like a possession almost.
Yeah.
You know, where you feel like if you don't do it, you're going to feel depressed, and you're going to feel like a loser,
Yeah.
you know, so you just have to do it because you just might as well just curl up and fucking die then, you know?
Well, that's the thing about an artist. Whatever your art is, your art can be food. Your art can be building, cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the thing is,
100%, man.
it's like just the creative mind. You can't stifle it because Otherwise, you're just stifling the flame of life. You know.
And this is why AI is so dangerous, because AI is it's they're positioning it to take the jobs that make us alive, the things that bring culture to our world. If you have AI creating the culture, then it's just a culture that's based on capitalism. It's not a culture that's based on
Yeah.
living,
Yeah.
on being alive.
It's a caricature. It's like the cart following the horse. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
different
it's
euphemisms, but
so it's such a
it doesn't ring.
dangerous thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's it'll be interesting to observe that. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it. I mean, I think it will be applied in our lifetime. It's going to be applied like by people who don't have money for a concept artist. It'll be interesting to see what it happens. But I hope I anticipate, and this is my silly optimism. Maybe is just that it's just going to be another tool in the tool chest, the switchblade of something that we
Again,
can use.
we don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
But
It
you
could be dangerous. It could be just another tool. It could be just less. There are going to be less artists that are actually doing actual art
right.
anymore. That some people will decide that they want. Oh well, I guess we should just adopt it because we have no choice. We have to, because we won't get hired if we don't. And
Mhm.
I know it's weird because I see a lot of it's interesting because of the way our the internet has gone over the past 20 years, how it's so much we have so much education on there, where you could just go to YouTube and learn how to do anything. You could learn how to build a house on
Sure.
YouTube, or put in heated floors, or
Right.
whatever. You learn
Right.
how to build a computer. My son built his first computer by just watching YouTube videos.
Wow.
He still uses it today. So it's I think it's really, kids today have a lot more benefits, but at the same time, there is this other thing where it's like, because of the instant gratification of video games and the instant gratification of even going online to learn something,
Well,
that
yeah.
getting a skill like drawing, people will take much more shortcuts today than they will like when I was learning how to draw, especially people.
Well, you talk about how animation informs your art. It's just like the gravity, the staging, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's kind of how I feel at stop motion. Even computer animation is based off of stop motion, and sometimes you could tell when people have just picked up a program and you see kind of floating, not real good bending points and all this stuff. It's because all the little things that you would have learned along the way to get to that point.
Right,
It's like,
right.
yeah, it's like being endowed with a superpower without was that Spider-Man thing. It's just like
Well, video games had that issue for a long time, where
yeah.
hips and shoulders and arms just
Mhm.
wouldn't work well.
Right.
And it really was all just a cause when you have engineers doing something and not people that
Right.
that understand anatomy,
The artistry
that
is
have done
missing.
drawing workshop.
It's
And
like technical. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
you have to understand how the muscles all wrap around the shoulder, and
Mhm.
how the hips crisscross with muscle and sinew and stuff. So it could deform right when you're when you're animating and stuff. I mean, nowadays, like in Call of Duty and stuff, like, it looks great.
Yeah.
Everything looks fucking amazing. But
Right.
back in the early 2000s, things were looking like, wonky in the shoulders and the arms, especially on our game Stranglehold. It was, man, they had those hips and arms were really wonky.
Well, this has been cool, man. I don't want to keep you too much longer.
Dude, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've done one on camera. I've done a couple before, but I've never done one on camera before. So
No worries. It's like I'm excited that you took the time to sit down. I've been in town for a little bit, and I'm glad I got to catch up with you a couple times. But I'm actually really excited that we've kind of documented a bit of your journey. I
Yeah,
mean, this has been
yeah.
like, honestly, with all the stuff that I know, this is a little bit of a snapshot, because we could talk at lengths, and obviously we could
I
keep
know.
on talking, but it's like,
For another 4 hours,
yeah, I
but
know.
I don't even think we have that much tape. I mean, is it even filming anymore? I mean,
Yeah,
didn't
I
we
think
run out
is
of?
it still filming over there? Yep, we're still on there. Okay. So, well, we can always get together another time
Yeah,
and figure out another
this is
time to
great.
talk
I
about
mean,
it. I know.
hopefully you'll interview more people, and
Yeah,
you'll have this go online, and then maybe next year we could do another one right
that'd be
before
great.
Stop Mo next year.
Yeah, we'll have if you come back the next year for a juror, and
I will.
yeah, awesome.
What else do I got to do?
yeah, nothing. You do nothing, you lazy man.
Such a fucking lazy asshole.
Well, thanks for joining us, and
All right.
thanks for tuning in, everybody. Vince Proce, go check him out. I'm gonna have all of his credentials online with with the posts and everything, and like even things that he talked about, the artists he talked about. We'll have some links and everything. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you, Vince. And
All right.
see you later.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Mo Stop Mo is dedicated to building community around the first form of animation ever put to film, stop motion. Find us online at mostopmo.com, on Instagram, and on Facebook. Hosted by David Rocco Ficini. Podcast theme by Richard Beethan III. And edited by me, Edwin R. Ruiz.